So welcome everyone to the Mayor's Institute. We're glad you joined us for this third session of the 2022-2023 curriculum. My name is Darian Vason with the African American Mayors Association. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to AMA's Mayor's Institute for Racial and Economic Justice Policy. We are excited to partner with the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation for this year's Institute. This is the third year of this first of its kind Racial and Economic Justice Policy Institute, and we focus on critical learning opportunities for mayors and their teams. Today's discussion will focus on equity and engagement surrounding climate change and environmental justice. It is my honor to introduce the Mayor of Mount Vernon, New York, and Vice President of the African American Mayors Association, Mayor Shawyn Patterson Howard, and Heather McTeer Toney, Vice President of Community Engagement at the Environmental Defense Fund. Mayor Patterson Howard is an esteemed graduate of Howard University School of Social Work, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and Hunter College, where she earned a master's in public administration and urban community development. Mayor Patterson Howard has served as a trailblazer in the not-for-profit and government sectors for the past 25 years. As a connector, she has always maintained a strong focus on developing systemic solutions that will address complex social determinants that have plagued our communities for decades. She passionately works with her staff and community partners to create continuums of service and innovative public and private partnerships to serve those who have been marginalized, disenfranchised, and are oftentimes voiceless. On November the 5th, 2019, Mayor Patterson Howard was elected the first female mayor in the history of the city of Mount Vernon, and the first woman of color elected mayor in Westchester County. Mayor Shawyn Patterson Howard's focus has been on strengthening the local community and using her relationship on the city, county, state, and federal levels to bolster Mount Vernon and restore trust in the city's leadership. Heather McTeer Toney was elected at age 27. She served as the first African-American, first female, and youngest mayor of Greenville, Mississippi. Under her leadership, the city emerged from significant debt and focused on sustainable infrastructure repair.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, for some reason I can't hear you all. I don't know what's going on. Give me just a second.
I'll finish up. In 2014, she was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve as regional administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency's Southeast region, where she served until 2017. She led efforts to create and support local environmental justice initiatives, promote clean energy, and enhance the quality of work life. Prior to joining EDF, Heather served as the Senior Director to Moms Clean Air Force, an environmental advocacy group focused on policy initiatives to protect children from the dangers of air pollution. Heather holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Spelman College in Atlanta and a law degree from the Tulane University School of Law. Heather, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for being patient. I'm actually in the EDF New York offices today. So we just had to do a little moving around the room. So hopefully it's not loud in my background, but thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity just to talk about climate, environmental justice, some issues that I know are prevalent throughout our communities, but ones that we actually intersect with and see every day. And it's always a pleasure to see my good friend, Mayor Shawyn Patterson Howard on. Hello, my friend, how are you? I'm in your state.
You know, we're probably only about 25 minutes away from each other right now. We have to find a way to connect. And so look, I'm really excited to have you here today, Mayor Toney, because once a mayor, always a mayor, right? So you're a mayor forever. So now you're the mayor of the Environmental Defense Fund, okay? And so we welcome you into this space. Thank you for partnering with AMA, not just today, but we had a wonderful, wonderful time and to spend together at CGI at the Clinton Global Initiative. And we are working jointly on the Mayor's Climate Toolbook and Toolkit, because we want to make sure that mayors all around the country, especially our African-American mayors, have information and access. I say oftentimes that the environmental justice space is not the first space that we step into. Oftentimes as mayors, we're focused on public safety and housing and education and economic development. And the environmental justice space becomes one of the last spaces. But once you step into it, you understand that it is the foundation of so much of what we do, because if our environment is not safe, not just our air quality and water quality and our infrastructure, but the built environment is also not safe, then a lot of our other goals will not be met. So thank you so much for being a leader and a trailblazer in this space and providing us with so much education, opportunity, and connection to move further in this space so that we could serve our constituents. And with that being said, I want to kind of jump into some of these questions because we want to make sure that everyone gets access to the wealth of knowledge that you have. So if you can tell me, what's the difference between environmental justice and climate justice? Can you talk about the difference between environmental justice and climate justice?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for just acknowledging that there is a difference between the two, because all too often we see them looped together and people will often assume that one reflects the other. The way that I think about environmental justice and the way we should all think about environmental work that we're doing as opposed to climate justice is environmental justice deals with policy. It deals with regulations that have been applied to our communities in a disproportionate fashion. So think like housing policies that have had a disproportionate impact to African-American communities. Environmental policy, environmental injustice comes out of that same space and same world. So the difference there, environmental justice, think past injustices. Climate justice deals with future and present. So the climate impacts you're feeling in your communities, the hurricanes, tornadoes, extreme weather of any kind, extreme heat. These are things that are taking place in the present and future moving forward. So the plans that we're making moving forward should reflect justice and equity in how we deal with them. So there are two distinct things, one dealing with past environmental policy and racial injustice in our country, because also let's add in here, environmental justice is a United States construct. Many of the things that we talk about is environmental justice in the US. If we go to other countries, it's called basic human rights. So
and so if you can lift up, why is it important for us to have these conversations and understand the difference and how this impacts us on a municipal level?
So often what you said at the beginning, Mayor Howard, is that these are foundational issues. And when you step into it, you realize that these are the underpinnings of so much of the social infrastructure that have had negative impacts in Black and Brown communities across the country historically. So I can share through a story. When I was a mayor, the thing I thought I was working on was infrastructure for my community, economic development, water. But I never saw it as an environmental issue because honestly, to me, I thought environmental issues were things that white people did, that were vegan and bird watchers and they hug trees. Those were the environmentalists. I still like bacon and chicken. And so I didn't fall into that category. I didn't see myself in that category. Forgive the background noise. I'm sorry, y'all. There's a window open here. So give that just a second to pass by. But I think like when I began to see myself in the work through Administrator Lisa Jackson, she came to our community and she said, you know, a lot of this work you're doing, this is environmental justice work. And I said, no, it's not. She said, yes, actually, absolutely it is. And I realized that so much of what has happened in terms of discrimination in the things that we eat or drink, the things that we breathe, the land that we stand on, has also had a discriminatory impact. So I thought about all of those years growing up in the Mississippi Delta, looking out into a cotton field or a soybean field and seeing the men standing out there with slickers on because the crop dusters were coming overhead and they were spraying stuff, and never realized that was an environmental justice issue, the toxic chemicals that we were taking in, the fact that water in our communities not only was not clean, but that economic development couldn't locate in our communities because we didn't have clean water. These were the barriers that impacted every social level of infrastructure in our community. Children can't learn in hot buildings. So when we talk about educational disparities, we need to also incorporate the fact that heat islands exist. And if our children are hot, then that is going to cause an additional disparity in how they're able to learn. So all of these things now are the underpinning of how we need to take advantage and account of both environmental infrastructure funding available to us now and be a part of the conversation for innovation moving forward. We don't want our communities to be left behind.
I mean, you said so many things in that are really key. We don't realize that the work that we're doing is environmental justice work. I think oftentimes as mayors, we're so busy working and working hard and trying to fix legacy issues in our communities that we're just working and we don't understand the construct of the work. We're so busy, like I said, just diving in. And you know, I received an environmental justice award last week, and I was like, well, but why? And they talk about, but this is the work that you're doing. I said, but it's the work that has to be done in our communities. So we're so busy doing the work and focusing on trying to find solutions for the challenges that we've looked happen in our communities for 20 and 30 and 40 years that we don't categorize it. And when we don't know how to categorize it, we don't realize the resources and the potential partners that are available in this space that look like us, that are available to come and work by our side. And so, you know, I was absolutely excited to meet you and your team and know that we have real partners that come from communities that look like ours and experience a lot of the same challenges that we have. So, you know, how do you approach environmental justice work?
We try to approach it as we have, I think you just aptly described, do and normalize everything in our everyday life. It is the foundational and integral thread through absolutely everything that we do. And it's what makes mayors, particularly Black mayors and mayors from vulnerable communities, the best suited to be able to do this. Because we've had to, we've not had any choice but to figure out how do we meet the needs of our people, all the needs at the same time. We know, and so no offense to the men on this call, but I do believe that Black women are magical. We're the only people who can go into a refrigerator and look at some ketchup and some eggs and come out with a full Thanksgiving meal. Like we can pull together resources in ways that are beyond our imagination, but that's what we've had to do. And so I think of environmental justice now as normalizing what is a part of our everyday structure. If I am listening to sirens outside of a window, I can begin to think about right now, okay, am I dealing with noise pollution in a particular community? How many communities of color deal with noise pollution? You know what? In the firecrackers popping off on the 4th of July, does that impact noise pollution in the community? Is that the same as gunshots that I heard when I was growing up in some parts of the neighborhood? And then how do we turn that into understanding what and how we educate our communities on noise pollution, right? Because that's a normal part of our everyday existence, light pollution. And then how do we turn it into money? Because if we're able to improve the health and wealth of our communities through renewable energy, clean energy sources, healthy food, so finding ways that we can at the same time improve the food security throughout our communities, we're now collectively doing what we do every single day, which is figure it out. and figure it out for our folks. So, Mayor Howard, for me and our team, environmental work, environmental justice in particular, and climate justice are a normalized thread through the entire fabric of everyday life.
I had to go back and unmute myself. I'm sorry. So, the first thing I realized when I stepped into the space in my community, it was our stormwater and our wastewater. Thank God, not our clean water, but our stormwater and our wastewater. And it felt overwhelming. It felt like a challenge of Herculean proportions. And so, for mayors who are watching this and viewing this and coming back and coming into the space, as we work to identify and address these challenges in our communities, what do you see as the biggest challenge?
That's a great question. And I think one that mayors are best positioned to look at your communities and identify not only what is the biggest challenge facing your constituents, but also how are we well suited to work together and use the collective power of all the mayors together to now really make it efficient that we get that particular thing done. And so, as you were saying, wastewater was an issue and is an issue in your community. In some communities, it's lead pipes. There's a significant problem with the lead pipe infrastructure, not only being old and dilapidated, but it continuing to poison children who are living in those communities. In some spaces, it's just simply the access to water, period. All of these are a water issue. The beauty of the African American Mayors Association is we have a collective table where we can sit together and say, we've identified water as a primary issue that we need to address. Administration, non-NGO community, business community, we're aligned on this. Now, where are the resources and how do we access those resources to address this problem for our communities in an environmental sense? And oh, by the way, we want to make sure that we're not just correcting past, but that we are at the same time creating job opportunities and wealth for communities moving forward. I think that's the power that we have in this space, because you're absolutely right. It is completely overwhelming as one person. But when we have not just one person, but a collective coming together and saying, we're going to address this problem, it gives assurance to individual mayors, but also to your communities, because you can go back home and say, guess what? I got a squad, I got a backup, I got a team. There are a lot of folks who look like us, who are working together. So our community is not alone. Our community is not standing out here by ourselves. And I think it adds breadth and scope to what we're able to do. Now, I want to shift a little bit to talk about this very real moment of the Bill and Ira. So, two cousins underneath the tree, but the bipartisan infrastructure law and then the Inflation Reduction Act, Bill and Ira, they're the two pieces of the Biden climate agenda that have a lot of funding in them. And I want to put a pin and flag to say, I want to come back and talk about that. But to answer your immediate question, I think as the mayors identify what issues they're all grappling with and come under one umbrella, it makes it so easy to be able to approach the administration and business communities to say, we want to do this and we have a power behind us.
And when I talked about, the biggest challenges, it would be nice if there were only one. But most of our community, so, I said my biggest challenge in Mount Vernon was wastewater, but it's wastewater, stormwater, it's the lead pipes, it's the air quality, all of those things we're dealing with. Like I said, right now, we haven't identified clean water as an issue, but, the lead pipes still have to be addressed. And so just like you said, Bill and I, This is an opportunity that we've never experienced in our lifetime, and we may never experience in our lifetime again. To go after funding, to seek funding, and our communities, especially where Black mayors are leading, where oftentimes we are under-resourced, we cannot miss this moment. And so how do we prepare? How do we make sure that we have the correct data, that our communities are engaged in this conversation? Because oftentimes the communities we're serving are trying to deal with the day-to-day struggles and the things that they can't see, they're not necessarily focused on.
Absolutely. So the IRA and the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Inflation Reduction Act, Bill and IRA, you're absolutely correct, monumental, transformative moments in time that we cannot miss for a couple of reasons. So number one, that we should know right now, there is a requirement that 40% of the benefit of these two pieces of legislation go to frontline environmental justice and minority communities. Now, 40% of the benefit doesn't necessarily mean the dollars, and that's something we need to identify and ensure we keep saying, okay? Because we want 40% of dollars as well as benefit. But also 40% is the floor. There is absolutely nothing within any of this work or anything that the administration has outlined that says they can't go to 41%, they can't go to 52%, they can't go to 80%. So we should know that 40% is the floor of what we can do, and that what we at a minimum are asking for. We should ask for more. That's point one. Point two is that we have a limited time, and I want to put a specific time frame for you. In November of 2024, we will have our next presidential election. And so since I'm talking to mayors, I know you understand election cycles. That means by 6 months before then is when people will have formed their public opinion about whether or not Bill and IRA have worked. That puts us roughly into July of 2024. If we go back about 3 months before that, which is Super Tuesday, that's when people will start campaigning on what was done and whether or not it was done well. And all of us will be called upon to speak to whether or not we got something done in our communities, we didn't get something done in our communities, whether the money was spent right or not spent right. That becomes now this accountability point. So we've got about between 12 to 17 and a half months to get things to you. There is an urgency in this, and not to miss that moment. At the same exact time, there is a concern that after 2024, we don't know that Justice 40 funding, that 40% floor, is going to stay there. Because if there's any shift or change in the administration, it is likely that the justice pieces disappear. So all of the funding that we're talking about specifically for frontline and Black and Brown communities, marginalized communities, vulnerable communities will disappear overnight in a worst case scenario. So that means everybody right now is really, really pushing. And I think to your question, Mayor Howard, it almost becomes a little terrifying. Well, how do we make sure we have what we have? The first place I want and encourage mayors to look is to look in our business council, where we have partnerships in renewable energy, environmental organizations, but also look at home. There are a number of environmental justice organizations that also have received funding and are well suited and well equipped to assist and make sure that you have the data, the metrics, the technical assistance. And they too are a part of this conversation. So that 40% benefit, start looking at home for environmental justice groups that can help with your technical assistance, because that's a Black or Brown organization that's now getting funding and they're helping their city right there at home. So some that, you know, we can, depending upon where you are, like I'm in New York, so the first one I'm going to think about is We Act for Environmental Justice. Peggy Shepard, who's been doing this work for years, If I was in Georgia, I would be thinking about Harambe House and Dr. Mildred McLean, or Dr. Erica Holman Hill and WAWA, the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. There are a number of organizations throughout this country that have been steeped in environmental policy and environmental justice, or I didn't use this term earlier, I want to use it now. It's the environmental civil rights. You asked, I think, about the difference between environmental justice and climate justice. I think of environmental justice always as my environmental civil rights. Don't forget Dr. King, when he was assassinated, it was at a sanitation workers strike. Again, clean water, clean working conditions, dealing with this. So it's always been an environmental issue. Sorry, I didn't mean to take that rabbit trail. But look at home for a number of the environmental groups that can help with technical assistance and can be funded to do so. You also have assets like EDF and other environmental organizations that have been doing environmental policy work for years. EDF has been around since 1967, and a lot of the large ENGOs have been going through their own transformation. These have been majority white spaces that also have evolved and are constantly learning that we have to do stronger, better work together, and we have to do deeper listening. That's where we've come to this space now. And then the third place I would tell you to look is let's begin looking at our business community that is also steeped to make sure that they're taking advantage because of the green dollars, but that, you know, having that economic stake is important. So for the toolkit that we're working on with AMA, our business partner is Elemental Accelerator. They are an organization that is, they're actually a 501c3, but they're do a lot of the business incubation. So that's where we pulled in a business component to how we're working on toolkit. And our goal here was to help cull this down for African-American mayors. Try to identify the spaces where you wouldn't have any barriers. So we were looking for things that you didn't always have to go through the state, because some states are not very friendly to justice elements. And then number two, where there was not a barrier of if you were already in the system from having one grant, you know, you didn't automatically get a rollover. We were looking for some places for new grants and new opportunities. And then also, you know, space where we could really leverage the Justice 40 component. So particularly where they were looking for that. That's how we put together our partnership with AMA. And Mayor Howard, I think it's going to be a really powerful way that mayors who are part of AMA can say, you know what, I need help, I'm raising my hand, and we can begin to gear them to some specific areas. And then last thing, and that I'll say on this, AMA and EDF, we created our partnership. The first thing that Phyllis said to us was, we don't have capacity. We don't have anybody that can help. And we immediately went to figure out how to solve that problem. So we created a fellowship with AMA where we invested $250,000 into AMA for a 2-year fellowship program to identify a person who could help us build out that capacity and be those arms and legs for us. That person is Stacy Fuji. She is awesome, absolutely outstanding. And because of what we did there, not only did we immediately begin fundraising to say, okay, we got to keep this going. This can't be just 2 years, but to expand it. So now we're looking at how do we get 4 more Stacys? Because if we're able to do that, it puts hands and feet, arms, legs, everything to work only for AMA mayors to be able to do the technical assistance, apply for the grants, and for us to measure it so that we know if we have 30 AMA mayors that apply for a grant and only 2 of them get it, there's a barrier there somewhere. It means we need to go back to the agencies, ask them what's going on, what's up, because we know 30 applications went in. we should have at least, gotten 5 of 30. That's what we're trying to design and pull together and really have a strong showing in 2024.
And that is important. That's really, really critical. I believe this time last year when AMA board met in Washington, D.C., and we met with some of the federal partners, we were saying it's great to sign the bills on the White House lawn and have all of those Black mayors there, but it won't mean much if we're not cutting ribbons and being able to launch initiatives in our community. And so, yes, capacity was the thing that we were most concerned about. Whether you're from a large city or you're from a small town, you need to have the data, B, the grants writers, the experts, and the people around you to help you secure. I have background noise now. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, it just passed. So we want to make sure that we're able to secure those dollars and bring the money home to our communities, because the work that needs to be done in our communities is critical. And as we've said, it's once in a lifetime. And I know as a mayor, I've experienced some anxiety. And that's why I always say we cannot miss this moment. And so locally, we added another grants writer. Locally, we added another grants writer to our budget. We've registered for the NLC Infrastructure Hub. We are working with EDF. We've reached out to Block Power. We have reached out to ACLIMA and getting air quality tests. We're mapping in our community, and we are reaching out, like you said, to those local partners who can help us do that. Because you have to, data equals dollars. And once we can talk about the problem, but when you're able to demonstrate and present incontrovertible evidence, that really helps to increase your likelihood of receiving some of that funding. And so one of the things that you said was very, very important. You said that 40% is supposed to be to the benefit of our communities. And I will say this, because there is a real business case. We received about $163 million in funding to begin to address our wastewater system. That's half of the money that we're going to need just for our wastewater system. And it's not easy finding Black and brown contractors who are sewer experts, who are engineers in this space. And this money is not just helping to solve a problem, but it is also about economic development and green jobs in your community. And so we have to find ways to really begin to skill and upskill people in our communities and work with businesses to really start moving in this space so that the money can be recycled in our community. I'm tired of seeing states away or several counties away and that money leave our community.
That should be preached from every choir stand in every city that is a part of this organization, because that's exactly what will happen. And we learned these lessons from ARA, from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act under President Obama. The term shovel ready became a phrase that we were all using, but shovel ready often meant that the architects, the engineers who were ready to go on these projects did not reflect or live in sometimes or look like the communities that needed the work. So what have we learned from that lesson? One, we need to make sure we have a consistent list of consultants, engineers, experts that we know are in our communities, or we can draw to our communities, or that we can pool in a way that helps to address these issues of a number of different communities all at the same time. And we have to, on a parallel track, make sure that we are educating and bringing on board in all of our systems, like ways that we can do and how we can tool up and have these conversations. And I think that, we as leaders in this space, are learning from the lessons that happened in past when we lost opportunities to have this money, or, you have a project that comes in, it's $100 million, but you don't have any Black engineers, or you don't have somebody that you can do a landscape analysis. And so all the money ends up going outside, and the elected officials, the mayor's the one who are answering the question, well, what happened to all of that money? We got all that money in here, and not a single one of these street lights got fixed. Like I know the routine. Probably can say it verbatim. That's the importance of having these parallel tracks to really make sure that we're not only addressing the problem, but the beauty again of having community and having these circles and spaces where we can have this conversation is to identify more than one problem that we're solving at a time. And there's another piece of this, Mayor Howard. It is having the ability to support in your communities and explain to constituents what's happening in plain language. Yeah. So, we can talk environment and all the money that we're bringing in right now, but when you go home, when you go to, speak at a Women's Day program, you gotta be able to talk to the mother's board about why it was so important for you to be able to do this. And so, that's where I think that's where there's, again, this parallel track that we have to do of communicating, of educating while we're pulling funding in, so that the mayors are able to keep going and doing what they're doing every day and connect the dots for people in their own language, in their own space.
That is so true. Like I said, we've brought in this money, but of course everyone's like, well, will we get the jobs, and will job training be available? And that's some of the questions that really I posed to the state. I said, this is really, really great, and we're going to solve the issue, or we're going to begin to address the issue around the infrastructure, but also we cannot miss out on this economic development opportunity. And we also want to make sure that we're just not bringing people in to fix the issue, but not building capacity within our communities to be able to maintain the investments that are being made in our community. And so we can build a total new sewer system for the city of Mount Vernon, but if at the same time we're not training people how to camera, how to maintain, how to flush, how to, look for breaks, how to repair, how to deal with all of these things, then again, you're always going to be calling people in to rescue you, because we're not going to be able to maintain the new infrastructure and programs that are built in our community. And so that's why, one of the reasons I really enjoyed talking with you and Block Power as well as Charge It when we were at CGI, because they really brought a training and workforce development piece that increased the capacity of the community to take care of themselves. I think we lost her. Okay.
Yes.
So while we're waiting for Heather to maybe log back on, Darian, would it be okay if we could just pull Amanda into this space and give Amanda an opportunity to kind of introduce herself and share with her the work of the National Black Environmental, our partners?
Yes, that'll be great.
Thank you. So Amanda.
Hello, my name is Amanda Bonham. I am so glad to be on call with another Howard grad. I am a Howard alum, and I'm actually in my 1.5 week of work with the National Black Environmental Justice Network. So I am diligently taking notes on everything that's going on in this conversation, and I'm glad to see that a lot of it is work that the organization that we work under, the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, is doing the jobs training, just working on re-granting. And I just sat in on a call on our Justice 40 work. So I'm not yet well acclimated to the full scope of what NBEJN's presence is there. But just really, really excited. I saw this on Twitter, and I know that the African American Mayors Association is again, dream strategic partner for us. So I'm so glad that this came across our Twitter feed and that we are here. And I would love to just stay in touch with anyone interested to see what the opportunities would be for us to work together in the future. We want to support your work and really, really just work to share these resources. So thank you so much. And I'll be on.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And Heather, welcome back. We had Amanda introduce herself, because that's what this is about. It's about networking and finding more people who you can partner with in this space. This is a very huge issue. And when you have, what do we always say, more hands makes for light work, right? But it's about really introducing ourselves to experts, not just in our region, but across the country. Because sometimes even regionally, people don't always work with you because they want to make sure their issue gets fixed. And when you are, oftentimes grants are given regionally. So sometimes you have to find a partner across the country who you're not competing with in your region for a grant so that you can get some technical assistance and some support and information. So, getting to understand the national framework and the national level of partnerships is very important. So Heather, since you are back, I want to just ask, maybe one or two more questions. We want to talk about climate change. And a lot of communities right now are really putting their climate action plan together and how they're going to deal with climate change. Can you speak to us a little bit about that and what type of resources are available for creating climate action plans so that we can be forward facing and deal with resiliency?
Absolutely. And resiliency is the core. So the same way that we have emergency management plans in all of our communities, a climate action plan is dealing with what do we believe are going to be the future climate impacts to our communities. And then how do we prepare adequately to ensure that people and property are not only taken care of, but we're able to flourish in this changing environment. Because honestly, climate change is not something that's going to happen. It already has happened. Many of our communities just over the past 24 hours have dealt with extraordinary water and flooding as a result of the storm system that has come across and dumped a lot of snow out west, now coming across, and we had tornadoes and water that has come through. And while many people will say, well, Heather, don't we always have tornadoes and storms and water and snow? Absolutely we do. But with more global emissions, so emissions is like what produces the heat up in the atmosphere. It sort of makes our atmosphere not be able to protect and keep in what it does. So the storms get stronger. The storms get stronger. They put and drop more water in our communities. There's more of a big gap. So there's a big hole between how the seasons used to come together. You had an identical summer, spring, fall, and winter, and now sometimes we can't tell the difference between them, or how the river levels were really, really low this year. And then, maybe in a year or two, we're dealing with long-term flooding. We get inches of rain at a time, whereas in the past, we might have got 1/4 of an inch at a time. These are all signals to us that the climate is changing. And as a result, we need to do climate action plans to make sure that the infrastructure we put in place can protect people moving forward. So that means when you're thinking about the streets you're going to put in, or you're doing your planning with your city planning department about what sidewalks, what sewer systems are going to be look like, how they're designed, how runoff is designed, how buildings are designed, what they're designed to sustain in terms of wind and fire. Those are elements that go into the climate action plan that help ensure the city is prepared for these types of transitions and changes. There's also components to climate action plans that include like regulations for air quality, making sure that you're taking note of the environmental hazards of breathing bad air and what that looks like around the communities where you have hospitals, schools, you're building out housing developments. So the more information we have accessible to us, the better prepared we are to shift and create the environment that allows us to thrive. Now, opportunities and funding to do these plans, guess what? There's a lot of funding available in the IRA and bill. In fact, there is over $800 million in the IRA budget specifically just for educating communities. And so one of the things that you could look at is, you know what, can I get funding here in this particular part of the bill to create my action plan? What if you're a community like mine was, Greenville, Mississippi, which was had a population of a little over 30,000 people. So small town, small community. I did not have a staff, a technical assistance, a grant writers. You know, where do you go? So that's where, again, working with organizations like ours, or I just heard from the young lady who introduced herself, Deep South Center for Environmental Justice is one of our dear friends and partners. I love Dr. Beverly Wright. There are a number of different groups that can help and assist. And this has really given me some food for thought to go back and make sure that there is a good solid list that AMA mayors can go to help to begin, you know, to have that conversation of where to go and how to do the technical assistance. There is one organization, it just escaped my mind, but I'm going to think about it, that is actually like taking the hand-holding part of doing your climate action plans. And I'm gonna think about it before the end of the day and make sure that I send it to Stacy or to somebody, and we can share it with all the mayors, because the access is there. And we certainly know mayors don't have the time to sit down and try to write out a plan. And sometimes even convincing city councils can be part of the challenge, but there are pathways to help to jump all of those hurdles.
Thank you so much. I can tell you, you know, I walked in as a mayor and had an EPA and a Department of Justice and a state consent decree against me. You know, oftentimes we were told, well, you can't speak about that publicly. That's like talking about your dirty laundry that's in your house. But when you don't talk about it, when we sit around and we act as if it's a secret and we're ashamed and we don't speak about it publicly, then people can't come and partner with you and support you. And so as we begin to speak about it publicly, you know, National Wildlife Federation, Natural Resources Defense Council, you know, Catherine Coleman Flowers down there in Alabama in Lowndes County came from the Center for Racial Equity and Environmental Justice. And we began to get partners and news and press around it. And the more press we got, the more people called to help us. And it did not feel as if we were in this space alone. And then the resources started to come. And so really, we have to act like it's not some dirty secret that's happening just to us. There would not be infrastructure monies available at this level if it wasn't something happening to a lot of communities. And we have to find a way to, like you said, really relay that to our residents and our stakeholders and speak about it in plain and simple forms, because as I also said, they said, like Jay-Z says, I got 99 problems and environmental justice ain't one of them, but it really, really is. It really is. It really is in our community. And so I just want to give you an opportunity. I don't know, I didn't see any questions anywhere. We have about 9 minutes left. And so if anyone has a question for Ms. Toney, you could either put it in the chat or, you know, I guess we could ask directly.
Absolutely, of course. So EDF is a member of the Business Council, and we are excited that we were the first ENGO that I'm aware of to be a member of the Business Council, and we take pride in that. And so by all means, reach out and we will get if we don't know the answer, we will find somebody who does know the answer, because that's the important part of making sure we're all working together in this space. And then I will leave 3 takeaways. So for mayors to come back to or remember or think about, and it is this: think about environmental foundational work as a part of your past, present, and future legacy of your role as a mayor. And that is coming and looking at what past environmental injustices in your community are you working to solve? What present thing do you want to do in your community? What was the thing that drew you to running for mayor, the problem? And it doesn't have to be affiliated with environmental justice at all. It could be public safety, it could be education, but what is that one thing? And then what is the future that you want to see for your community when you leave? What is the legacy you're leaving? We can tie an environmental and climate initiative to each one of those areas, because it shows just how normalizing we should be to climate and environmental justice within our communities, and then put the dollars to that. Put the dollars to those specific things. That's where we go to figure out, how do we get funding to achieve that problem? If it's stormwater, public safety, and wanting to have a new Silicon Valley in your community, then guess what? Those 3 things can be tied together. It helps not only the communities in which you live, but it helps to define for mayors, what is this environmental component and that you want to try to attack as a problem, but also to put some arms around it so that it's not so overwhelming, so that it's something that you can embrace, that your constituents can embrace, and you're moving forward, not feeling like you're doing some other work for somebody else, but that you're doing work for the people, doing work for at home, and doing the passionate work that I think we all want to see happen in our communities. That's how I think about it every day. And I certainly hope that's helpful because I plan to be around and doing this for a long time to come.
No, we absolutely thank you so much for your wisdom, for sharing your expertise, but also sharing your passion, because this is an area that I know that you are passionate about. And like you said, you have made yourself available, and you're making yourself and your organization available to partner with AMA and all of our partners and those who need assistance around the country. And so that is critical. As it's been stated, environmental justice is an issue that we all need to focus on as mayors. We need to also look at climate justice, because we don't even hear the term anymore. I think it got played out because they said this is a once in a 100-year storm. And they started saying that over and over again. Oh, Hurricane Ida and Hurricane Isaias in our area. Oh, this is a 100-year storm. But those came a few months behind each other. And so how many 100-year storms are we going to have? We're not going to have those, because this is going to be more regular type of climate and weather incidents that we're going to see in our communities. And we have to make sure that we're storm hardening and we're preparing for it. We have to know how to do it. We have to know what partners are out there that are available to provide us with technical assistance. And I think we're being confronted now as mayors with issues that people didn't see 50 years ago, between mental health and environmental justice and public safety. Everything right now is pushing and making itself a critical issue. And so partnership is going to be key. It's going to be critical so that we can address these issues. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. I truly appreciate it. And I'm going to hand this back over to Darian right now from AMA as she closes us out. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. It was wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have recorded today's session and we will make it available online. Special thanks to our partners, the Kaufman Foundation, the Environmental Defense Fund, Heather McTeer Toney, Mayor Patterson Howard for making today's session possible. And stay tuned for more information about our January session in the coming days. Thank you all.